allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. It's nice to see an audience tonight. Future board meetings, August 24th here at 6 p.m., September 14th and September 28th here at 6 p.m. We have no revisions to the agenda, so we'll move straight to public recognition.
And it doesn't look like we have any donations tonight. So, and as far as recognition, I will save my information to the superintendent's report later.
Okay.
And I will say though, the principals will start coming in after the first day here. I did not schedule them to come in, but they'll start coming in next meeting, and we'll do the approval of the school improvement plans for high school, the 3 high schools next meeting, and then the first meeting in September will be the elementaries, and then they'll be coming one at a time to actually do other programs and presentations for us.
Well, then we'll just move right along to public comment on agenda items only. Do we have any?
Just here for support.
Have we caught up on Facebook? Or we're not doing that tonight, are we?
What?
Did we get a new speaker?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not even paying attention.
Well,
I was looking for the speaker that we had that
Trying
didn't
something a
work.
little different.
We went
We're
fancy.
hard wiring in, so
Okay,
it
something
looks good.
that might actually work. All right,
So
so
good. Yeah, the other one was Bluetooth.
The
and so
Bluetooth, we feel like with
all the technology in
constant
here.
static, that's
Gotcha.
the issue.
Yes, so that's hardwired.
Too much anxiety.
all right.
It's really good.
All right. So
We
we'll
tested
move
it,
on
so it should have been good.
to consent agenda items. Looking for approval of the minutes of our last regular meeting on July 27th.
Move to approve.
Second. Motion and second to approve the meetings from our last meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Financial reports, start with claims.
And Chris, on page 6 of mine, we had a claim for the intersect. Is that the completion, all that,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Let me just find it
like
here.
90,000?
Yes, so that was the final install from the rewiring project at both schools. We also did some extra work at Southwood. There needed a little bit of rewiring issue there. But that was the.
So they were able to get done before start of school?
Yeah, so as far as the wiring and the ceiling tile stuff done, that's all completed. That was all done before the end of the school year. So right now, they're just working on the roofs. They started at Southwood. They finished the first section, which was the section over the office area and hallway into that set of classrooms. And now they moved over to the east gym. And they'll work on the east gym and the weight room, and then once they complete that, they'll move over to Northfield and start on their sections.
Any questions?
No, I'm good.
I'll make a motion to approve claims for payment then.
Second.
Motion and second to approve the claims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Payroll.
So this is just the second payroll of the new fiscal year. Pretty standard, typical. Next payroll will be our last payroll as far as the completion of the 2021 school year payments. And then the August 30th pay will then represent the new school year payments with that, so.
I move the payroll.
Second.
Motion and second to approve payroll. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Financial summary. Turn that over to Dr. Kuhn.
Just the end of the month balances for July there. So you can see, the beginning balance column, which shows where we started out in January. and then to where we're at now. So things are moving in the right direction. Everything's still looking good.
We have free lunches for everybody again this year,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Well, a parent asked about prepaid, they'd already have money in their account. I noticed it's listed here, but memory's saying 38,000.
Right.
Does that have to stay in there, or can they get their money?
They can get their money if they prefer to, with that. There are some automatic things that happen as far as, we still have like a call connection because we can't have a negative balance in some of those things. The issue that they have to be careful with is even though lunches are free, anything extra is charged. So they have to pay for a la carte stuff, they have to pay if they get 2 lunches, they have to pay for extra milk, that type of stuff. So it's always good to have that money on there if they want to. It's not going anywhere, but if they want to draw it back out, they can. So I didn't have anything else as far as the financials. I guess I can go into the education fund draft.
Yeah, let's do that.
Again, this is just a draft of our estimate for the education fund for 2022. This will kind of conclude a lot of the things that we've been preparing for as far as the budget is concerned. So we'll look to have our budget hearing in September. So this is kind of the last fund that we represent, I guess, as far as our budget is concerned. So the education fund, just breaking down, gives you a comparison of the 2 columns on the far right. The first one represents what we will advertise, and then the second one represents what we adopted for last school year. And then I just wrote a little bit of notes on some of the things off to the side just to kind of show some differences, because we do have some differences this year. The transfers, we still do the transfers, but we don't show it as part of our budget estimate. We show it in a different line in our Form 4B when we submit that as part of our budget process. Transfer tuition, you can see kind of has went up a little bit because that is part of our agreement with Compass Rose that we would pay for the transfer tuition that we collected on their behalf. So that's expenses that we don't typically or didn't typically have before in the past. And then a lot of the other stuff that's mentioned there as far as changes were concerned is just a lot of things that we used to share with Wabash City Schools that we no longer share. We used to have expenses that we would trade off on for billing purposes, such as the preschool, the shared preschool program, and the RISE program for special education, some of those programs that we're doing in-house now. And so some of those dollars are reflected in some other parts of the budget. And so that's why you see some of the differences in that. But overall, pretty similar to, comparable to what we had last year.
You had to plug in the 3-year-olds here. Rules.
Yeah. So that's just the estimate there for the education fund. Like I said, we'll have our hearing in September. So I'll start working on some of the advertisement stuff that we have to do from a legal standpoint. And then the process that goes with that for the budget hearing.
Probably feels good to get that put together, doesn't it?
It does. Everything just hits at the same time at this time of year with the budget, and then you have all these fiscal reports that are due, and it's a busy time.
Of those 3-year-olds, do we have a teacher and an aide? Or do we just have, so we have 2 in each of those classrooms?
Yep.
How many students do you say?
I don't know what the exact enrollment is. That was just a number off the top of my head when we went in and looked.
Well, we have 2 4-year-olds in north, and then 1 3-year-old south north, and then 1 and 1 at Southwood. And so our numbers, we wanted to max at 18, but we don't have 18 at the 3-year-olds, but I believe we have pretty much the 18 at the 4-year-olds.
We have 32 listed in Skyward for the 3-year-olds. For all three classes?
There's different ratios between the 4-year-olds and.
That would be for the two classes, but one of each.
Yeah.
So
So it'd be
maybe
16, so I guess.
So many kids per
adult.
yeah,
Same with the 4-year-olds.
yes, but they're different.
1 to 12 and 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Well, I just got a text that, that the video keeps on going in and out.
Just checked
Did
it.
you do
I think-
that?
I think when you swipe really fast, it takes a while to catch up.
Oh, okay.
Because it really sets both times.
So swipe slower.
Yes, so, it's on a delay anyways, but it looked great this time, good sound, everything.
All right, any other questions about the education fund? All right, we'll move on to personnel. Under resignation, we have Warren Daly, baseball coach at Southwood High School. Under employment, we have Andrea Beeks, cross-country head coach at Northfield. Tricia Barton, paraprofessional, Sharp Creek Elementary. Liberty Viger, 4-hour cook at Northfield High School. Mary Cole, paraprofessional at Northfield High School. Laura Nordman, paraprofessional at Metro North Elementary. Stephanie Selleck, high school secretary at Southwood High School. Hannah Ely, music teacher at Metro North Elementary. Eric Kirtland, assistant cross country at Northfield High School. Kelly Beaver, assistant cross country at Northfield High School. Lisa Hall, paraprofessional at Southwood Elementary. Ben Bachman, junior high football at Southwood High School. Cindy French, cook at Southwood High School. Ashley Harris, cook at Southwood High School. And Jordan Boyer, head girls golf at Southwood High School. Under resignation, we have Katie Arwood, an aide at Southwood Elementary. Under retirement, we have Deb Mitchell, paraprofessional at Southwood Elementary. Transfers, Jennifer Miracle is transferring from special ed aide to credit recovery study hall aide at Northfield High School effective August 10th, which is today. Sarah Adamman transferring from paraprofessional to library aide at Sharp Creek Elementary. And Amanda Lyons transferring from Sharp Creek Library aide to Northfield Library aide effective today.
I moved to the slate.
Second.
Motion and second to approve personnel. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Heartland Career Center report.
I have none tonight.
Okay. Superintendent's report, Mr. Keyfaber.
Well, like you said, as far as recognitions, obviously to get the school year started, lots of work to be done. And so just mentioning, not everyone by name, but our custodians, maintenance, mechanics. In the office, we have transportation, human resource, accounts payable, payroll, benefits, treasurers, secretaries. Also, we have all this technology, of course, administration, teachers, food service, nurses. Hope I didn't leave anybody out, but there's a lot of people to make the first day run smoothly. And also, yesterday when we had the opening day for teachers and certified staff, we had Dr. Tony Giaquinta, who spoke to us, and a lot of it was about early childhood education, but also just about trauma that students have and how we can look at that. And it was interesting. There were some different situations, some different images of a newborn, their brain, and then how the connections are made at 2-year-old and how they continue on. It's just interesting that it's very, very important to build those relationships and communicate with our students and being able to work on it. One thing that was very interesting, he said that, when a student came to you in a classroom or on a bus or wherever, maybe on a football field or volleyball court or something like that, but if there's a situation where they're very frustrated and very upset and maybe even throwing some kind of a temper tantrum, if I can even say it that way, but doing that, you don't really necessarily supposed to ask what's wrong, but what happened. And so some of that, making that switch a little bit to find out what happened, because everybody's lives is a little bit different, and there might be some of those things that we don't know about in their life, and we have to try to make those connections. So I thought that was interesting. There were a lot of different things that was mentioned, but it was very, very good. I had some positive comments about that. We tried to do it quickly. Yesterday we did the Teachers of the Year, Staff of the Year. Also made sure we recognized those that had like 10, 20, 30, and 40-year experiences here at MSD of Wabash. And then Yeah, that was the main thing. We talked about the new care portal program that we're looking at, talked about the Wabash Promise. So very good food service, had a good breakfast. And it's interesting because we didn't do this last year, we didn't do it last year, but this year is just really neat. And actually, Tony actually mentioned how it was so neat to see all the people interact and come. It's actually hard to start at 7:30 for breakfast and then to get everybody to get in the auditorium by 8 o'clock because we were not successful of starting at 8 o'clock because of relationships with all the staff and wanting to catch up from summer months. So anyway, that was very, very good. And then of course the first day today, it had to be a little bit different than last Tuesday. Last Tuesday is probably like 58 degrees in the morning, and this was like so humid and hot, but a good first day. And speaking of first day, really we have very, very unofficial numbers, but the numbers are looking good as far as enrollment goes. But of course, you know that ADM count won't be until September, but the enrollment does look good. Of course, when I looked at it, I said, well, man, Metro North, they lost a lot of students. The Sharp Creek gained a lot, obviously because we moved third and fourth grade. And actually, those two schools are only like 10 students apart as far as the number of students. Now, of course, the 3 and 4 year olds do not count on the ADM, but as far as actual bodies in those buildings are almost identical. They're only 10 students difference from one to the other. So anyway, I'll keep you informed about all the numbers, but it's really looking good, especially for the 5 traditional schools that we have. It looks like we have an increase, but of course we don't know. There's some students that show up today. We don't know if they just forgot or if they went to another school. That happens, different things like that. Or maybe they just didn't want to come. It was too hot. They wanted to go to the pool. So hopefully that wasn't the case. So very excited about getting the school year started like every year, but there's always lots of questions, and so we are moving forward with what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. Curriculum and instruction report. Mr. Drake, have we started testing yet?
It's right around the corner, I'm sure of it. I would just share that we've had some professional development, and so last week worked with 15 science and social studies teachers to talk about literacy for 2 days. And Erica Tyson led some Project Lead the Way training, and so we've probably had 20 teachers in the last 2 weeks doing professional development outside of the school year. And so everybody's prepped and ready to go. And it was fun to be in the buildings today. There was just a lot of energy, right? All those kids, and it just seemed like everybody was just happy to be back.
So we've got a good start then.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to new business. We have before us a recommendation to approve the supplement to the re-entry plan for 2021, 2022. And I will let you speak to that.
Okay. Obviously, you voted on the re-entry plan for 2021, 2022 on July 13th. And then, of course, there was different situations came up, obviously like the executive orders by the governor. And so wanted to make a few little details to add to that plan. First of all, positive cases, we didn't put that in the plan, but positive cases will be reported to the Indiana State Department of Health. If they're reported to us, obviously we will report them, and students and staff who are COVID-19 positive will follow appropriate protocol and quarantine policies. Under contact tracing, we're looking at doing that differently, a little different than last year. We will still do the contact tracing, and parents will be notified, and we have set it up now that we can do through the school messenger. Just like when I call, I can have the principals call, and we haven't determined if this is approved tonight. We'll work on this tomorrow with the admin or with the principals to decide if it's going to be their voice or my voice, but they would be notified that they're a close contact, and at that point then the parent would determine if they would quarantine them based on the current guidance and policies. And so basically it's the parent's decision on that part of it. And going down to pre-pandemic standard operational practices, basically just want to maybe identify those a little bit. Masks are optional, we keep on saying that. All rooms and buses will have a seating chart. And enhanced cleaning and hand washing procedures will be encouraged and practiced with hand sanitizer stations available. Staff and students are expected to conduct at-home self-screening monitoring for related symptoms prior to leaving their residence on a daily basis. Students and employees in a household with a confirmed positive case are to remain at home, and students and staff will be required to fever-free, less than 100. This isn't any different than before, even before COVID, for 24 hours without use of fever-reducing medication before returning to school. So really not a lot of changes, maybe just some details written in. But the big thing is just the contact tracing. Parents would get that phone call, and then through the school messenger, it's kind of interesting. You can do it by school, you can do it by student. So if they're a close contact, they will select through the software that we have through School Messenger or Skylar, it's called also. And that will be just pushed out, and then they can make that decision. It can be a parental decision on that. So not any major change, but.
Any question or discussion?
Resolve one issue, so.
Then I'll make the motion. We accept this.
Second?
Motion and second to approve the recommendation for the supplement to our reentry plan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We have no unfinished business. We'll move on to board policy regarding our electronic participation in future board meetings.
So Mr. Daisy and I talked about this some. This is a new Indiana code that we have to have this in policy. And the nice thing about this policy is there were some choices that can be made as far as reasons why you would do participate electronically. And so it's all here. I don't know if you want me to go over all of it, but I did check with school board's attorney and the School Board Association attorney to make sure I knew which one we selected. So in other words, this was the original plan from I know you can't see that, but the original plan from the state, from the Indiana School Boards Association, but then they had all these things where it would say, you could do this, or this, or this, or this. You had to follow all the Indiana code to go through that. And so after I worked on that and shared it with Mr. Daisy, we felt like this is the one that we would want to be able to provide to you as a first reading. And so of course you don't vote on it tonight, but just ask any questions and see if we want to make any changes to it before you vote on it next meeting. But it does allow you to be able to do this virtually. And there are stipulations though, but we've got to follow stipulations. You can't do it all the time though. But one of the reasons that I added, because it said that we could add that, now I cannot see it right away. It's on the second page. No, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the second page yet. One where I said the different reasons. Of course, the military service, illness or other medical condition, death of a relative, an emergency involving actual or threatened injury to persons or property, or work-related. And so I realize in some of your situations, work-related might be something that if you have access via the internet, wherever you're at, then you can also participate that way. But you can't do it all the time. There's stipulations with all of this. So any questions though?
It's in there someplace, isn't it, if I'm correct, that you can only do it 2 times a year?
Correct, yeah, and that's one of the.
I like that provision.
2 consecutive.
2 consecutive days.
Right, and that's one of the stipulations in there. You could have done it different ways. You could have said it could only be 50%, but I felt like keeping track of that all the time throughout the year, it'd be easier just to know, okay, you can only go 2 times in a row and then you have to skip, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I felt like that would be better than trying to track it a whole year saying, okay, was that half the meetings or not half the meetings? We could have done that, but I think this is a better way of doing it. And I don't think you want to miss a lot. And we haven't, and you haven't, so that's good. But it does allow for different things that happen to make it work. But here again, you have to be visual, you have to be part of it. I have to, whether it's Zoom or whether it's we do something with Google Meets, we have to see you. You have to participate that way if you do it that way. And you can vote. Because the other thing is you could always participate, or as far as you could comment, you could just never vote.
We have to put it in writing 24 hours ahead.
Right.
That we want to do.
In an email.
Yes, and I think I put my name on there too, just because then I would set up whatever we did with you. So.
And although we can vote, there's about a half a dozen things here listed
Exactly.
on things that we cannot vote on electronically because they are major things like budget adoptions and referendums and raising or establishing taxes.
All those, yes. So it's kind of nice, but there are a lot of stipulations with a lot of different things.
But it does give us an option.
Did I miss it, or what brought this about, the Indiana School Board Association?
Yeah, I think part of it too is, the whole thing with COVID, and then the Indiana School Boards Association actually did bring it to legislators to see if that would be something, because it's always been a situation. And plus, with technology now, you can be part of families. I mean, they learn, it's not the best way, but it is a way, especially when you have to be away. And look at some of those. I mean, military service, obviously, and illness or other medical conditions. I mean, you might get sick sometime, and you might want to participate, but you just don't want to be here.
And without adopting the policy, then that's not an option. Electronic, meeting electronically is not an option.
Outside of an emergency situation like COVID.
Yeah.
Is that-
Right. Yes, that's exactly right.
Right, but that would be under executive order.
Yeah, it's an executive order that.
Allowing that. Okay, and as Mr. Keypaper said, that's the first reading, so there won't be any vote on that tonight. So we'll move to public comment for all items.
Okay, call me Dan. I just want some clarification because I can't read that and I can't think with my head cranked, so.
Okay.
So if close contact but asymptomatic, it's parent choice?
Yes.
Vax or no vax, it's parent's choice.
Correct.
Thank you. So you won't need to know who's been vaxxed or not.
Correct. Yeah, we're not asking.
We're not
Perfect.
asking that, right?
Perfect.
That's the parent's choice.
So there's no difference in quarantine. Because I was reading the top part, but then when I got to the bottom, I got confused. That bottom where it says pre-pandemic, that mean that's what it was before and that's not,
Right, even before we ever heard of COVID, we would encourage you to wash your hands properly and not come to school when you're sick.
that's all kind of common sense. So if a family member has a student home sick who tests positive and they have been like a cold for a couple days, is there a quarantine time limit for those siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be, yeah,
And
that's
that's
under.
not different, because some places I'm hearing it's different if you've been vaccinated or not, and I don't get the point because your chances of getting it are the same, really, but whatever. So if a sibling has it, the other siblings are, whether they've had a vaccination or not, they're gonna be quarantined for 3 days or 7 days or however many.
Right, correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Doesn't matter, okay. And then sporting events, there's not gonna be any limits or no mask at this point, right?
Correct.
Okay, those are just things that people ask all the time, and I wasn't perfectly clear, so.
I have a question. I came here not to speak tonight, so this is very, very impromptu. I'm learning. I'm concerned about her same concerns. I do want to say that I respect all of you guys. I know pretty much every one of you on a personal level, not all, but my question is, what concerns me the most with executive orders? I know that July the 1st, you were able to make your own decisions on reentry or going back to school, mask, no mask, quarantine, whatever you wanted to do. My concern tonight after listening to you, and I know this is 90% of my friends, which are also parents, why do you educate me a little bit? Why do you have to vote on an executive order? Why do you have to vote to approve an executive order? Just like you voted to accept the contact tracing, correct? That's what you just voted on?
Maybe I don't know if you want to respond to that, but, okay.
Because that's why I'm here tonight, and I hope to make a lot of other meetings to educate myself.
Mhm.
The executive orders is what concerns me personally the most. Why do we have to vote to accept them? If they're forced and you vote against it, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, I believe, and there's different executive orders, obviously, so I believe it was 2115 is the one you were talking about, that talked about July 1, where school boards can make those decisions.
Yes.
But then there were other things in there specifically that were a little bit different. And then I believe, and don't quote me because I have to look it up again, but I believe it was 2119 was the new one that talked about close contacts. And so since it gets those different wording of different things, then we at least want to make sure that we recognize as a board and as a school corporation that we're following those and we're doing, we're following those and doing the best to make kids safe and doing all those different things. So that's a very, very good question. But I think it's just allows us to look at it, to talk about it, and to make those decisions too. Because I was like the very first one, oh, sorry to interrupt, but the very first one though, that executive order was allowing the school boards to make those decisions. And of course, you needed to have school boards vote on that because everybody would be different. I mean, there's schools all around that do everything differently, right? And so I think you can see that everywhere. And so that was something that we need to do. So when it came back and talked about the close contact, we need to look at a supplement to add that to that, just to our old plan. And part of it is too, we are required to post these on our website and through some of our ESSER grants that we get. It ties to some of the grants that we get because the ESSER grants are federally funded. And so they want to see that we're following some of those guidelines, executive orders, and different things like that. And I will just say there's so many different people in the decision making of that, because of course you hear about the CDC, you hear about the Indiana Department of Education, or I'm sorry, the Indiana State Department of Health, of course the Indiana Department of Education, and then of course you have the local school boards, you have local health departments, and so not everybody always speaks the same language and all that. So it sometimes makes it very complicated because of all the different information that is given to us. So, but ultimately this is the governing body. And so the governing body would go ahead and make those decisions.
I was going to say, from my perspective, the reason that we vote on these, even though there's an executive order that says what we have to do, is partly because of the confusion of 2115 that gave boards the authority to do what they thought was in the best interest of their school district. You see some schools, like Fort Wayne Community Schools, giving a mask mandate. Some schools closer to home saying, well, we're not going to have a mask unless you're on a bus. So this is an opportunity for the MSD school board to go on record, and we have an electronic record of it, to say, this is precisely our policy. Even though you may hear things from CDC saying that this is what you're supposed to do, this is the approved policy from the school board of Metropolitan School District of Wabash County. And I think that's important because, even though we've been given that choice, we still do it with the knowledge that I've received a couple emails within the last week or so of people who are not happy with our choice to make masks optional. So I think it's just a matter of us going on record and saying, this is our preference and this is how we would like to run things at MSD or have things done at MSD as far as the particular policies. We know that because of the nature of it, we're not going to make everybody happy, but we just have to do what we think is in the best interest of the school district.
Is it fair to say we're interpreting the governor's executive order for our school?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say from the legal standpoint, you asked the question, why do we have to approve the governor's executive order? That's not what we do. Governor is authorized by statute to issue executive orders to address specifically the statute, health, welfare, and safety matters. So I was on vacation when the executive order came out. But this is the policy adopted by MSD in light of that.
So to push a little bit further, if the CDC cannot set law and the governor mandates executive orders based on the CDC, then further, as we go on week by week, why do we have to follow what the CDC is saying? or do we not?
Because the governor is interpreting the CDC's information as however he sees fit and makes executive orders based on what he believes to be the scientific evidence as presented to him by the CDC. So technically, if I could say it this way, and maybe, you know, I should refer to our legal counsel, we're not necessarily following the advice of the CDC, we're following the mandates of the governor of the state of Indiana. Is that a fair way of saying that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
He gets his information from the CDC, we take our lead from his executive orders.
yeah.
And if we don't follow his lead, no funding. Because I've heard this
That's a
over and over and
possibility.
over. Has there ever been a school board push that?
Historically, I would imagine you could find an example of a school board who chose to, in some way, either violate state law or not uphold state law and dealing with some pretty serious ramifications for doing so. I can't cite specific examples.
So we don't have proof that our government would withhold funding.
Well, I will say this though, so this is a comparison, has nothing to do with this, but for food service, for example, that's a federal program, okay? And so we get audited with that. And so if we don't follow those things, yes, we will get charged for that. So we may get written up, we may get different things like that. But if we do something that's incorrectly, then there could be financial implications because of it. Because it is a federal program. So for example, I guess we're going to get into the weeds too much here, but you know, it's a little bit different now with COVID because everything's free, but pre-pandemic, pre-COVID, if you would not follow the guidance of free and reduced lunch applications, making sure you're checking those and doing different things like that, and you were giving them free and we were giving federal dollars for that, and we were audited and we were incorrect, then we're gonna get charged for that. And so it can't happen that way. So I'm not saying it will with this necessarily, but we do get audited. We get audited. Our teacher contract gets audited. Our food service gets audited. The regular books get audited. Our transportation gets audited. We get audited by almost everyone. So is that all of them, Dr. King? I think about all of them.
Grants.
Grants
get
audited.
Our ECAs get audited.
Yeah, everything gets audited. And so it has to be done correctly. And so this is new. So we don't know if it's going to come back and say, okay, let's see your policy. And are we going to withhold ESSER dollars? Are
Our
we going to?
enrollment gets audited, that'd be one that would be tied to
Which one?
dollars. Our enrollment gets
Our
audited.
enrollment gets audited. Everything gets audited.
And if I can say something, you know, that's kind of why, obviously, you know what our policy is. And we're basing our policy off what the governor or, you know, state's saying. So, you know, it is also important for you to voice your opinion to your state congressman, to the senators, because they're obviously helping, you know, regulate some of those things that are coming down. So if you have a preference of one thing or the other, which I know they're getting bombarded with phone calls because of this. So don't just, I guess, don't stop here. You know, if you have, you know, things that you want to talk about, because it does come from, you know, if we could raise our money just in our community, it'd be different, but that's not where we get it. And so, and obviously we want to protect the kids. We want to do what's best for kids, not only for their health, but for their education and sanity and everything else. But ultimately it comes down to, you know, what we're asked to do, and then what's the very limit that we can push it.
If I can read between what you're saying, because I can relate to the concern of the reaching or far reaching of a dictate from a governor as far as an executive order versus legislative law. And in my mind, there should be a difference that seems so quickly anymore to have executive orders for everything. So we've lost a lot of the legislation benefits of representation. So
And
that's,
and you see that,
that's my personal
you know,
opinion.
from governor even up to presidents. I mean, they've signed these like executive orders, even though it hasn't went through the legislation. You know, they just, you know, even though it's not law, they make the orders, and so everybody follows it like it's law.
Back to your question though about what if we chose to violate the executive order? I think you're gonna see that play out right now in Texas. Governor Abbott in Texas has said there will be no mask mandates in the state of Texas. But then the school board for the Dallas Independent School District has said masks will be required in the Dallas school system. So they are in direct violation of an order from their governor. So it might be interesting to watch what happens there and what happens to Dallas on whether or not they're fined or, because that could set a precedent too. Even though it's flip-flopped, the concept is still the same. You have a school district in violation of a mandate from their governor.
Same thing.
One thing I brought to ask, and you kind of mentioned it, was the bus. The bus is included in the bus. I didn't see anything separating the bus out, so the bus is not required either.
We addressed that in our last meeting, in July, about the original.
Which was not gonna be.
Right, that it's, that masks are not, that they're also optional on the buses.
And drivers
Because
will
the
not be.
executive order requiring that said, if I can remember exactly how that was worded, and I don't know that I can quote it verbatim, but was that the policy would be set by the school districts as they saw fit regarding grounds, buildings, and transportation.
Like most things with this, what I'm hearing from various legal sources is to continue to stay tuned, to see what the challenges are going to be that are inevitable. And without getting into the federal and state differences, I think that in defense of the Indiana State Legislature, they did pass the environmental emergency law, which allows the governor to act under that policy. So this is like what goes on.
Okay, anything else? Any items from board members? All right, we're adjourned.